Coming from a single-parent household, I guess that means you're a high school dropout, huh? Do you work in a nightclub, maybe? Perhaps in a mature women's club? What a flashy line of work you're in. At my daughter's marriage introduction to her fiancé's family, his mother said this to my daughter in a condescending manner. As her mother, I was naturally infuriated. My daughter quickly explained that it wasn't true, but her future mother-in-law wasn't listening. Oh, you mean university? You don't mean Harvard, right? Anything other than Harvard isn't really university, you know. Anything other than university isn't really a school. That's why I'm saying you're a high school dropout. The fiancé's grandmother joined in, pushing their bizarre logic on us. My anger reached its peak, and I finally decided to reveal my daughter's true background. It seems there are some misunderstandings, so let me explain. Huh? And so, our retaliation, or rather, our marriage introduction, began. My name is Amy. During my student days, I was what you'd call a bookworm, really good at studying. Perhaps because of my one-track mind towards studies, I was always shy about romance, and even now as an adult, I've never had a boyfriend. After graduating from college, I started working at a bank, where my serious work attitude was well known. Even the young colleagues, who seemingly experienced in love, spoke to me formally, amused by my seriousness, and one day, they invited me to a mixer. Amy, you're really serious. I remember you saying you don't have a boyfriend. Would you like to come to a mixer with us? We're just short one person. I'll go. I really want to go. Okay. You're really eager, aren't you? My colleagues, like Catherine, were a bit taken aback by my enthusiasm, thinking she must be really desperate for love. But I was completely overjoyed at the idea of attending my first mixer. I was so excited about the invitation to the mixer, dreaming of getting a boyfriend and eventually marrying him. Then, a few days later, I went to the restaurant with Catherine and the others, where we were seated opposite 3 men. Then the self-introductions began. Nice to meet you, I'm Sean. I'm Jack. I'm Ken. The 3 men were apparently high school classmates. After we introduced ourselves, we enjoyed a meal while having lively conversations about work problems and hobbies. Then, one of the men started showing interest in me. It was Ken. I was watching you eat so elegantly. Would you like to exchange contacts? I quickly exchanged numbers with Ken and continued to enjoy our conversation. He worked at a gas station, and unlike the quiet me, he was very straightforward and left a good impression. Amy, I like you. I'll treat you well, so would you like to go out with me? Ken and I met several times after the mixer and eventually, he asked me out, to which I happily said yes. That's how I finally got my first boyfriend. However, one day, I was called aside by Catherine and the others during a break, where they shared something unexpected about Ken. We feel bad for inviting you to the mixer without doing our research. It's about Ken. We heard from Sean and the others that he's a bit reckless with money. Sean and the others have been saying Ken seems like a different person lately. Catherine and the others seemed uneasy about Ken's rumors. At first, I was shocked to hear this, but I brushed it off as just rumors. It's okay. Even if something happens, it won't be your fault, so don't feel responsible. I want to cherish this relationship and the love I've found. Committed to Ken, I reassured and calmed Catherine and the others with a smile. Love really does make one blind, I suppose. And so, things moved quickly with Ken, and we were soon heading towards marriage. I invited Catherine and the others to the wedding venue, and they were as happy for me as if it were their own celebration. Congratulations, Amy. Sorry for making you anxious before. But thank you for inviting us to your wedding. Since nothing had gone wrong with Ken up until then, Catherine and the others also seemed relieved and once again congratulated me on my marriage. How happy I was at that moment. It's thanks to Catherine and the others inviting me to the mixer that I met Ken. I'm really grateful to you all. We're going to have a bouquet toss later, so feel free to join in if you'd like. Well, I'm going to be the one to catch it. I was in the basketball team in high school and pretty confident in my jumping ability. That's not fair. As someone who is not sporty, I'd never be able to catch it. Watching Catherine and the others get excited about the bouquet, completely ignoring me, the bride, I couldn't help but smile. In the end, Catherine, who played basketball in high school, caught the bouquet and was visibly thrilled about her victory. After the wedding, I continued my job at the bank as Ken wished. We started living together, and as Ken and I both had busy days, we continued to nurture our love, until soon I noticed something different with my health. Suddenly feeling nauseous, I ended up vomiting in the bathroom. Suspecting something, I later bought a pregnancy test at a drugstore. To my surprise, the result was positive. Congratulations! You have a healthy baby girl inside. The next day, when I went to see an obstetrician to be sure, I could not hide my joy when the doctor told me so with a smile. After the checkup, I immediately contacted Ken to share the news, and he was overjoyed about my pregnancy. That's great, Amy. Our child is right here. I can't quite believe I'm going to be a father. The reality will sink in as the baby grows, Ken said and rubbed my belly. I didn't feel much of a reality yet either. But I hoped that as the baby grew, the feeling of being a mother would grow too. Believing in Ken, who was so happy about the pregnancy, made me think that he was a reliable partner who wouldn't betray me. Who could have predicted that this would be the start of my worst days? What? You're buying that much? It was when I went shopping for baby items with Ken, my belly now noticeably bigger. I was startled to see how much he was piling into the cart. Since I had already started my maternity leave, I wanted to save as much money as possible and keep expenses to a minimum. But looking into the cart, I saw lots of toys and items we wouldn't need for a newborn. We'll need these things sooner or later, and it's better to buy them all now. Don't worry, I'm working, and you don't have to worry, Ken said with a smile, reassuringly patting my shoulder. We then headed to the checkout with the cart full of items. At that time, I agreed with him, but I had no idea that this unnecessary spending would later reveal a shocking truth. A healthy baby girl has been born. A few months later, in the hospital, I had safely given birth to a girl. Ken hadn't wanted to be there for the birth, saying he didn't want to hear me in pain. Although it was a moment of great emotion, meeting his child for the first time, I wondered if it was selfish of me to have wanted him there. While I was curious about what Ken was doing, seeing my child cry for the first time made me feel fortunate that she was born safely. We named the baby Emma, a name Ken and I had agreed on earlier. However, Ken didn't even come to visit Emma in the hospital. The only close relatives who came were my mother and father, and Ken said he was too busy with work to visit. 5 days passed with me feeling uneasy and resentful towards Ken. When Emma and I finally came home from the hospital, Ken was nowhere to be seen. That's when I started to think calmly. Ken's past actions all pointed to one conclusion. I began to suspect that he might be cheating on me. And then, an incident occurred that confirmed my suspicions. While I was going back and forth between my parents' house and my own home for childcare, Ken rarely came home. One day, we got into our first argument, and afterwards, exhausted, he fell asleep. His cell phone happened to catch my eye. And despite knowing it was wrong, I picked it up to look for clues of his suspicious behavior. And there it was, evidence of Ken's infidelity. I was shocked to find messages about Ken meeting another woman and arranging to meet her at a hotel. I realized belatedly that his absence during the birth and his failure to visit me afterwards were due to this affair. What hurt the most was discovering that this other woman had a child with him. I was stunned to think that all the baby items we had bought together were actually for his mistress's child. It made sense why some toys that we had supposedly bought for Emma had disappeared from our house. Ken had claimed they were broken and thrown away, but this seemed too strange since they were hardly used. It wasn't found in the trash. Never did I imagine I would find out this way. As I scrolled through Ken's cell phone, which he had no idea I was looking at, I found something else. There were photos sent by the other woman. In them, a woman who appeared to be his mistress and her child were smiling happily with Ken. In the child's hand, there was a toy we had bought for Emma. Beside Ken, who was still asleep and unaware, I cried silently, trying to stifle my voice. The next day, after gathering evidence, I waited until Ken had left the house and then took out the cash card and bankbook I had kept in the dresser. I rushed holding Emma in my arms to a bank. My fears were confirmed there. Seeing the balance at $0 brought tears to my eyes. This was the money I had saved for Emma. Ken must have secretly taken the cash card from the dresser and only took the money so that I would not find out. I could see Ken secretly putting the cash card back in the dresser later so as not to leave any unnatural impression on me. How can you explain this, Ken? I confronted him when he returned home, showing him the evidence of his infidelity. His face turned pale the moment he saw it. I'm really sorry. It was just a moment of folly. A moment of folly doesn't lead to stealing the money saved for Emma. I had no choice. I got her pregnant, and with just my gas station salary, I couldn't support her and her child. Not enough? You just said pregnant. Are you telling me, besides her child, you've fathered another with that woman? Discovering this shocking fact from him, Ken's foolishness was fully exposed. He was unaware until it was too late and ended up apologizing profusely to me. I'm so sorry, Amy. I beg you, please forgive me. I thought how irresponsibly absurd he was. How could he think such actions would be forgiven? I presented him with divorce papers, which I had already prepared, along with a demand for alimony. Please divorce me. And don't ever show up in front of us again. Ken, crying, agreed to divorce. It was ironic that he was crying when I had cried so much I had no tears left. I made him promise to pay child support and had him pack his things and leave the house that day. I became a single mother. I returned to work earlier than planned after maternity leave, with Emma now in daycare. Thanks to my bank salary, I wasn't immediately struggling financially, but picking up Emma from daycare and managing household chores and childcare after work were physically and mentally draining. Sometimes, I would recall the past and chastise myself for my mistakes. Hey, are you okay? You look pale. Just go home for today. I'll cover the rest of your work. Make sure to rely on your parents, okay? Don't overdo it. Thank you. When I felt unwell, Catherine and the others, who already knew about my divorce, naturally supported me. Despite my fault in blindly trusting Ken and marrying him. Their kindness was soothing to my wounded heart, and that kindness was healing not just for me, but for Emma too. Even though Emma couldn't speak yet, her smile seemed to support me through my heartache. Several years after my divorce from Ken, I noticed that child support and alimony payments were not deposited into my account even after the promised date. I had consulted a lawyer and settled for installment payments, but I never expected them to fall behind so soon. I wasn't very hopeful considering he had taken money from my savings before, but determined to make him pay, I took the divorce agreement we had made before separating and went to the family court and legal advice center for consultation. I had brought Emma with me, and she seemed to take an interest. She asked me, "Mom, what is law?" Well, it's something that exists to protect us. Like how American law is helping and protecting me in this tough situation. As I explained, Emma began to show interest in the law. Particularly in civil law and family law, and started learning about it on her own. Seeing her live smartly even at a young age, I thought with a smile that she was a studious girl like me. Since Emma had excellent grades from elementary school, I didn't want her to feel inferior because we were a single-parent family. So, I worked hard at my banking job. Cutting my own allowance to the bone and saving for her education. Emma, don't study too late. Go to bed early. I know. Whether she knew about my struggles or not, Emma worked harder at her studies. I worried a bit seeing her study late into the night, but her efforts paid off, and she went on to the top public middle and high schools in the area. Emma, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Are you planning to go to Harvard? No, I want to go to Yale. Yale? I was surprised, having assumed she would want to go to Harvard. But Emma was attracted to the liberal atmosphere at Yale, which also had a women's dormitory. It might have been a deciding factor. I realized I still wasn't quite relied upon as a parent. Sure, being a single mother with only my income, there were limitations. But I wanted to work harder and save more money so that Emma could rely on me. Just make sure to call me sometimes. Take care when you go. I know. And Mom, take care of yourself too. Several years later, as I sent Emma off to New Haven, feeling a bit lonely. I was proud that she had been accepted to Yale, her longtime dream. Inspired by her achievement, I pushed myself even harder at work and eventually got promoted. When Emma became a junior at Yale, I informed her of my promotion. "I've been promoted and now make enough money, so you don't have to live in the dorm anymore," I said, but Emma declined. "If you really don't mind supporting me, I'd like to go to graduate school," she replied, making me smile, feeling that she was finally opening up to me. I felt more relied upon than when she left for Yale, which made me happy. In the end, the child support from Ken was often delayed, and I barely received any, but I managed to fund Emma's graduate studies with my earnings. As time passed, Emma graduated from graduate school and stayed at Yale, progressing from an assistant to an associate professor. Proud of my daughter becoming an associate professor, I also reflected on my own inexperienced love life and my mistake in choosing a marriage partner. I hoped Emma would have more experience in love. So, when she came home for a visit, I asked her, "Do you have a boyfriend, Emma?" "What?" Out of the blue. "Of course, I have a boyfriend," she replied, leaving me stunned. I had thought she would be shy about relationships like me, but I was clearly mistaken. Young people nowadays are quite mature, huh? "Well, introduce him to me sometime." I'll think about it," Emma said, looking somewhat excited. I, too, looked forward to the day she would introduce her boyfriend to me. Then, 10 years passed, and I received a call from Emma saying she was returning to New York. She had been accepted for a professorship in civil law at Columbia University. Over the phone, I couldn't contain my joy, and though Emma told me I was being loud, she didn't seem to mind it at all. "Thank you, Mom. I was able to do my best because you were there for me." "It's not like that at all. It's all your own ability. Living in the women's dormitory must have been tough, right? Back then, my income wasn't much, so I guess I made you worry." "Not at all. I learned things more important than money from you. And that's what led to my success now. I'm truly grateful." Hearing Emma's happy voice made me feel rewarded. Despite the troubles caused by Ken, she grew up without letting it affect her, stood by me, and for that, I was the one who felt grateful to her. Then, as Emma was about to return to New York, she announced her plans to marry her boyfriend. Apparently, they had been in a long-distance relationship between New Haven and New York due to their respective jobs. I wanted to focus on my career until I became a professor, and my boyfriend's parents were kind of difficult, which delayed our introduction and marriage talks. Emma's boyfriend's name is Kevin. However, I was genuinely happy that Emma remembered her promise to introduce her boyfriend to me. The marriage introduction, involving Kevin's family, made me nervous, but she's my precious daughter. I don't want her to experience the same things I did, so I need to see for myself. With these thoughts, I approached the day of the marriage introduction. But it turned out to be an introduction unlike anything I had expected. As soon as Emma and I sat down at a fancy restaurant, Kevin's mother started with a snide remark, "I hear Emma comes from a single-parent family," which instantly irritated me. Yes, what about it? Single-parent family means you must be a high school dropout, right? Do you work in a nightclub, maybe? Perhaps in a mature women's club? You must have quite the flashy job. "No, I went to university and never worked in a nightclub," Emma replied calmly to Kevin's mother's relentless attack. But I could sense her quiet anger. "Oh, you mean university? Not Harvard, right? Anything other than Harvard isn't really a university, you know. Anything other than university isn't really a school. That's why I'm saying you're a high school dropout." Kevin's mother was joined by his grandmother, both brandishing their nonsensical logic. Kevin's family, including his parents and grandparents, all seemed to be Harvard graduates and unfortunately, extreme elitists. I could feel their condescending gaze on us. "I work for a major trading company, you know, and I'm quite exceptional." He actually says he's exceptional himself. Next, Kevin's father and grandfather, who also work for major trading companies, started boasting about their illustrious careers. Emma listened and endured silently, but I was increasingly irritated by my daughter being belittled. While Emma and I were getting more and more withdrawn, Kevin suddenly raised his voice, cutting through the tension. "Can't you all stop? She's someone important to me. I won't tolerate such remarks." Kevin, having listened so far, was already on the verge of losing his patience with his parents who were ridiculing Emma. However, Kevin's mother and grandmother, even sensing his anger, still didn't stop. "Why are you so upset, Kevin? It's just the truth." Instead of letting them explain, we're interpreting and saying it for them. It's easier that way, right? Isn't it, Emma? That's not really the case. It seems there are some misunderstandings, so let me explain. Huh? Kevin's mother looked at us as if wondering what we could possibly say, but I continued with a smile. By the way, my daughter is a professor at Harvard. Do you still have a problem with that? A professor at Harvard? You're just bluffing, telling lies. A single mother's income couldn't possibly support Emma to that extent. Right, Kevin? Kevin's mother, doubting my words and turning to Kevin, was met with his exasperated reaction. It's true. Emma graduated from Yale, served as an associate professor, and this spring became a professor at Harvard. If you can't believe it, you can call Harvard. Here's the phone number. Kevin, confidently stating this and even offering a paper with Harvard's phone number, left his family exchanging glances, their faces turning pale. Emma, Amy, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. If you had explained earlier, we wouldn't have misunderstood. Even in this situation, Kevin's mother tried to make excuses, but nobody responded. Emma, quietly furious, said, "Actually, I was asked by Kevin's father's company to become their legal advisor, but I guess a nightclub worker as a legal advisor isn't a good match, so I'll decline," and was about to call the CEO to refuse. Kevin's family panicked. Realizing that she also had the CEO's mobile number as proof, and not lying, they turned even paler. I had to stifle my laughter at the situation, but Emma chided me for laughing too much. As the atmosphere grew strange, Kevin cleared his throat and turned to me. "So, I apologize for the delay, but nice to meet you, Amy. I'm Kevin. Please forgive our numerous rudeness. With all this, I'm hesitant to proceed with our marriage plans." "It's okay. If you're fine with it, Kevin, why don't we move to another place and talk, just you and us?" But discussions about marriage should involve both families. Under normal circumstances, I would agree, but unfortunately, I prefer not to engage with people who can't choose their words carefully. The meal wouldn't be enjoyable anymore. Please continue your dinner without us, and enjoy your family time. Left speechless by my sharp response, Kevin's family just sat there, faces pale. Then I took out my purse from my bag. "It's a shame we couldn't enjoy this delicious meal, but here is the payment for our part," I said, placing the money I took out on the table. Then I said, "Now, if you'll excuse me," and left the restaurant with Emma. Kevin hurried after us, and it was decided that we would discuss the marriage with Kevin alone. The next day, Kevin visited our house alone, wanting to apologize again for his parents' and grandparents' rudeness. Yesterday, Emma and I had a pleasant dinner at a different restaurant with Kevin. We invited Kevin into our home, sensing he was sincere. "Don't worry about it. I'm sorry you had to go through all this because of us." "No. I wasn't expecting my parents to behave like that, and I'm honestly confused. But I've been thinking about cutting ties with them. That's why. I'd like to ask for Emma's hand in marriage again." But you know, Kevin, there's no legal way for a child to sever ties with their biological parents." Emma's shoulders slumped and she said this as if she was troubled. Perhaps because of what happened yesterday, Emma had a bad feeling about his family and seemed to want to get away from them as much as possible. Kevin was not to be outdone. While it's true they can't sever ties, he offered to move into Emma's family, showing his seriousness. "I understand you're serious, Kevin. But marriage isn't always joyful. It can suddenly fall apart and become hellish. There's no guarantee of happiness." Speaking from my own experience, I addressed the couple. They listened intently, swallowing nervously. Seeing them so earnest made me realize they truly cared for each other. I continued my words further. "However, if you two can promise to respect and support each other, then I will congratulate your marriage." Impressed by Kevin's genuine intentions, I consented to their marriage. Kevin, upon hearing this, looked truly happy. Emma also seemed relieved that things were settled. Kevin then returned to his family to report the marriage, and it was decided he would move out. His family, left speechless by the turn of events, remained in a stunned state for a while, as Kevin later told me. Months later, Emma and Kevin rented an apartment near my house. I was happy they chose to live close by, as I had missed Emma during the years she lived far away. Though Kevin's family was difficult, Kevin himself seemed like a good person. Emma, having been in a long relationship before deciding to marry, reassured me that their marriage wouldn't turn out like mine and Ken's. It turns out Emma didn't turn down the legal advisor position after all. Whenever she and her father-in-law meet at the company, he seems quite deferential to her. As a legal advisor, she's also going to check if any harassment is happening within the company. Dealing with my education-focused father-in-law's harassment of his subordinates is kind of scary, Emma said, getting goosebumps. It seems she still feels resistant to meeting her father-in-law. As for me, I finally got promoted to branch manager at the bank. Amy, the branch manager. We're counting on you. Don't say that, it's too much pressure. Catherine. It's not like that. Amy, you've worked so hard to get here, I'm just so happy for you. My colleagues, like Catherine, were as thrilled about my promotion as if it were their own. Though we speak formally at work, we still have a relationship like high school girls, going out for dinner or karaoke in our private time. But I couldn't have made it without you all supporting me. You were always there to lend a hand when I was struggling. Thank you, truly. Catherine and the others had always been there for me, helping as if it were the most natural thing, whether I was physically or mentally struggling. Expressing my gratitude, Catherine and the others looked a bit bashful. Also, congratulations on your marriage. Wishing you and Sean a lifetime of happiness. Thank you. It's all thanks to your bouquet, Amy. Catherine had cultivated a long-term relationship with Sean, whom she met at a mixer, and they had just registered their marriage the day before. The wedding ceremony would be held later. Catherine always linked good things back to me. Stop flattering me. Compliments won't get you anything. Besides, I'm divorced, so I'm not sure if the bouquet luck applies. That's not true. Amy, you seem the happiest you've ever been. Catherine said with a smile, making my eyes widen in surprise. I hadn't realized I looked so happy. Indeed, with Emma's marriage settled, my career promotion, and even Catherine's successful marriage, I was surrounded by joy. I used to think marriage was the ultimate goal and guaranteed happiness. But it's not that simple. Despite the hardships with Ken, I was glad I had worked diligently all these years, and I felt encouraged to continue living earnestly. Come to think of it, I didn't quit my bank job because Ken said, "You should keep working after marriage." He did one good thing, and the thought made me laugh.